And we begin with President Trump's efforts to end the war in Ukraine. The president says the U.S. could potentially provide air support to Ukraine, but no American troops will be on the ground. Meanwhile, the White House says plans for a face-to-face meeting between Russian President Putin and Ukrainian President Zelensky are underway. Now, the Kremlin has yet to publicly confirm those talks, but the White House says Putin agreed in a phone call with Trump. CBS News correspondent Natalie Brand is at the White House with more on this. Natalie, good morning. So what more are we learning about this potential Putin-Zelensky meeting? And what did the president say about the involvement of U.S. troops in Ukraine?
Good morning, Michael. Good to be with you. Well, a source tells CBS News that Budapest, Hungary is among the locations being considered for these potential talks between Putin and Zelensky. The first meeting, if it were to happen, that would take place since 2019, before the full-scale invasion of Ukraine. The White House hopes to settle on a date and location by the end of the week. And White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt saying accommodations for this meeting are already underway. But as you noted, Michael, Russia, a spokesperson for Russia, has not yet confirmed that Putin will participate, only saying that direct high-level talks would take place. As for those security guarantees, we know that Secretary of State Marco Rubio is working with European allies on this front, although no specifics yet revealed, although the White House reiterating that no U.S. boots will be on the ground in Ukraine, though the president has signaled that air support could be a possibility. And Zelensky, in a post on social media referencing another drone strike just last night, saying we need strong security guarantees to ensure a truly reliable and lasting peace. Michael.
All right, we'll continue to watch how this plays out. Natalie Brand, thank you. And for more on this, I want to bring in CBS News senior foreign correspondent Holly Williams, who's following developments from the Ukrainian capital of Kyiv. Well, Holly, yesterday, the president ruled out U.S. boots on the ground as part of any security guarantees for Ukraine, as well as NATO membership. So does this leave Ukraine with any real security guarantees under a possible peace deal?
Good morning, Michael. Well, the Trump administration actually ruled out NATO membership for Ukraine many months ago. NATO membership would protect Ukraine. But then over the weekend, President Trump's special envoy, Steve Witkoff, actually said that during that meeting between Vladimir Putin and President Trump last week, Putin had agreed that the U.S. and Europe could provide NATO-style protections for Ukraine. Now, I mean, the first question to ask there is, how would that work and what would it look like? Because the whole fear about allowing Ukraine to join NATO is that it could potentially embroil the U.S. directly in a conflict with Russia. And then secondly, if you're going to give Ukraine NATO-like protections, then why not just let Ukraine join NATO in the first place? So there are a whole raft of unanswered questions there. But the bottom line, I think, is that to agree to any peace deal, Ukraine needs to know that its friends will come to its protection if Russia invades again. Because make no mistake, the Ukrainians have trust issues, for want of a better word. Russia has invaded their country in 2014 and then again in 2022, and international agreements have failed to protect Ukraine in the past.
And Holly, while all this is unfolding, we know that the fighting in Ukraine continues. What more can you tell us about the latest attacks overnight?
So, Michael, Ukrainian officials say that overnight there was a Russian drone attack in the Odessa region that started a large fire. It seems to have targeted an industrial area. And then another drone attack in the Sumy region, which is north of here, apparently wounded 14 people, including 3 children. I guess the point to make here is that while outside of Ukraine, people are talking about a peace deal, people here in Ukraine are living and dying in a war zone. And the Ukrainians who we speak to say that they simply do not believe that Vladimir Putin really wants to end this war. They think he is simply playing along in order to avoid angering President Trump. And they say that even if Vladimir Putin agrees to some kind of a deal, they do not trust that he would actually go along with and comply with any agreement that he signs.
All right. Holly Williams reporting in Kyiv. Thank you.